Hello and welcome everyone. Let's begin with one honest, uncomfortable truth. Overthinking is silent, but it's deadly. It doesn't slam doors like anger. It doesn't cry loudly like heartbreak. It doesn't scream like panic. It sits quietly in your mind, in the background, in the dark. It says, I'm just keeping you safe. I'm just making sure you don't make a mistake. I'm just helping you be prepared. But while it pretends to protect you, it slowly kills your joy. Overthinking doesn't attack you all at once. It doesn't show up like a big crisis. It shows up in tiny moments, small questions, little hesitations. Should I send this message? Or maybe not. Should I say this idea? Or what if they laugh? Should I start? Or wait until I'm more ready? On the outside, nothing is happening. You're just sitting there. You're quiet. You look calm, but inside, it's exhausting. Your brain is running, racing, replaying, predicting. You feel tired as if you've worked all day, even though physically you've done almost nothing. That's the hidden cost of overthinking. It drains your energy without moving your life forward even one step. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize they're doing it. They call it being careful. They call it being smart. They call it being prepared. But careful is when you think, then act. Overthinking is when you think, then think again, and never act. You're not being wise. You're stuck. Today's world makes this even worse. You open your phone and instantly your mind is attacked. Images, opinions, comments, judgments, expectations. You see someone else's success and suddenly your brain says, you're behind, you're late, you're not enough. You were already thinking about what your friend said yesterday. Now you're thinking about what a stranger posted today. Then you're thinking about what could go wrong tomorrow. Your mind is not in the present. It's jumping between the past and the future like a scared animal, searching for danger. And in the middle of all of this, something important gets lost. Your life, right now. Overthinking is not just a bad habit, it is a thief. It steals your time. It steals your peace. It steals your sleep. It steals your confidence. But worst of all, it steals your opportunities. You want to start a YouTube channel. Instead of posting your first video, you replay every possible reaction in your head. You overthink your voice, your face, your background, your grammar. By the time your thoughts calm down, the moment is gone. You want to speak in English. Instead of practicing one simple sentence, you overthink your accent, your mistake, your vocabulary, what people will think. So you stay silent. Another chance to grow disappears. You want to message someone you care about. Instead of simply saying, "Hey, I was thinking of you," you write, delete, rewrite, doubt, and then you send nothing. Overthinking doesn't just keep you stuck. It quietly rewrites your life story. In your heart, you are brave, loving, full of ideas. In your actions, you become frozen, distant, invisible. Not because you're weak, not because you're lazy, but because your thoughts built walls where there were only doors. Here's the hardest truth. Overthinking is not protecting you from pain. It is creating pain. You feel rejected before anyone rejects you. You feel like a failure before you even begin. You feel embarrassed about conversations that never happened. Your brain tells you, if we think long enough, we'll find the perfect answer. We'll be safe. But life doesn't work like that. Life doesn't reward the one who thinks the longest. Life rewards the one who is willing to move, even while they're scared. Every meaningful thing in your life came from a moment when someone decided to act, not overthink. Someone said yes. Someone took a risk. Someone moved. Overthinking is the opposite of living. Living is messy. Living is uncertain. Living is imperfect. Overthinking tries to remove all risk, all uncertainty, all imperfection. But in trying to remove the risk, it also removes the life. So you end up breathing, but not really living. You end up thinking, but never experiencing. And here's the most important part. Overthinking is not who you are. It is a pattern your brain has learned, a habit, a survival strategy. Your mind is not evil. It's scared. It's trying to protect you from pain, embarrassment, rejection. But it's using the wrong method. If I worry enough, I can control everything. The truth is, the more you try to control everything, the more you lose control of yourself. You are not your overthinking. You are the one who can watch your thoughts. You are the one who can say, wait, this is just a story. This is just fear. This is not reality. The first step to freedom is this simple, powerful realization. Overthinking is not wisdom. Overthinking is fear wearing a smart mask. Once you see that, the mask begins to slip. You begin to question it. You begin to separate you from your thoughts. And in that tiny space between your thoughts and your awareness, your freedom begins. If overthinking is the silent thief that steals your joy, then your mind is the skillful magician that creates the illusion. And this illusion is powerful because it feels real. That is the next truth you must face. Your mind lies to you, not because it wants to hurt you, but because it is trying to protect you in the wrong way. Once you understand this, the whole landscape of your inner world begins to change. Your brain was not built for happiness. It was built for survival. Countless generations ago, this made sense. Our ancestors needed to assume danger. A sound in the bushes could have been a predator. A rustle in the dark could have meant death. So the brain evolved to prepare for the worst, even when the worst wasn't happening. And that ancient instinct still lives inside you today. It reacts to a message that hasn't been answered as if it were a threat. It reacts to silence as if it were danger. It reacts to uncertainty as if your whole world were collapsing. But in modern life, the danger isn't outside. The danger comes from believing every fearful thought your brain creates. Think about how quickly your mind builds stories. One small event becomes a full narrative. They didn't reply. Maybe they're angry. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I ruin everything. Maybe people always leave me. None of this is true. None of this is proven. Yet your mind presents it like a documentary, not a guess. That is the trap. Your thoughts do not introduce themselves as possibilities. They introduce themselves as facts. But they are not facts. They are emotional predictions, shaped by fear rather than reality. This is why people feel trapped even when the door is open, just like Houdini, struggling for hours with a lock that was never locked. The door was free. The way out was always there. But he believed the lock was real, so he acted as if it were. Overthinking does the same thing to you. Your mind creates a false barrier, a fictional danger, a story with no evidence. And because you trust it, you stop moving. You stop trying. You stop living. So the next step after recognizing overthinking is recognizing the liar behind it. Not every thought deserves your belief. Not every fear deserves your obedience. You must begin to stand between yourself and your mind and ask, is this true? Is this proven? Is this fear or fact? The moment you question a thought, it loses its absolute power over you. The moment you doubt the story, you weaken the storyteller. That small moment of awareness, the space between the thought and your belief, is the beginning of freedom. Your mind will continue to whisper. It will continue to predict, exaggerate, invent. But now, you will know something you didn't know before. Your mind is not always telling the truth. It is simply trying to protect you from dangers that no longer exist. And when you stop treating every thought as reality, you reclaim the power your overthinking has been stealing for years. This is how the journey continues, not by silencing your mind, but by learning which thoughts deserve your trust and which ones you must gently release. Once you begin to see that your mind often lies, something important becomes clear. The real danger isn't the thought itself. It's what happens when you let that thought grow unchecked. Because thoughts don't stay small. They multiply. They expand. They transform from a whisper into a storm. And this is the next truth you must understand on your journey. You must catch the spiral before it grows. Overthinking rarely begins with a loud explosion. It starts with one tiny, innocent thought, a single cloud in a clear sky. Why hasn't she responded yet? Did I say something strange? Did I make a mistake? At first, it feels harmless, a simple question. But your mind, already trained by fear, grabs it with both hands and begins building a story. That story gains momentum. It gains emotion. And suddenly, what began as a soft breeze becomes a hurricane inside your chest. This is how overthinking traps you, not all at once, but slowly, gradually, quietly. And by the time you realize you're lost in it, the storm is already raging. That's why the key is not to fight the storm after it arrives, but to notice the moment it begins forming. You must learn to feel the first shift, the first tightening of your stomach, the first quickening of your breath, the first loop of doubt, and say to yourself, "Stop. This is the start of overthinking. This is not the truth. This is just a story my mind is creating again." These words act like a hand pressing gently on the brakes. They interrupt the momentum before it becomes unstoppable. Because once your thoughts start spiraling, they move fast. One unanswered message becomes 10 imagined scenarios. One awkward moment becomes a lifelong flaw. One silence becomes evidence that you are unworthy, unwanted, unimportant. But none of that is reality. None of that has proof. It is simply fear gaining speed, a single drop of water falling into a cup. Not a problem. But keep adding drops, one after another, and eventually the cup overflows, not because the water was dangerous, but because there was too much of it. Your mind works the same way. One thought isn't the issue. The issue is when you let the thoughts pile up without releasing them. Catching the spiral early is an act of self-rescue. It is choosing awareness over autopilot. It is saying, "I see what my mind is doing, and I choose not to follow this path today." The more you practice this, the more skilled you become. You start noticing the storms earlier. You start stopping the spiral sooner. And slowly, the storms that once consumed you become nothing more than passing clouds, temporary, harmless, unable to control your life. This is the continuation of your journey, recognizing not only that your mind lies, but also when the lie begins. Because once you interrupt the story early, you reclaim the peace that overthinking steals. And for the first time, you begin to realize that the power to stop the storm was always inside you. When you learn to catch the storm before it grows, something even deeper begins to reveal itself. Most of the storms you fear are not happening in the real world at all. They are happening in the world your mind invented. And this leads you to the next powerful realization. You must escape the universe of what if, because it does not exist. After you stop the spiral early, you start noticing the pattern behind it. Almost every anxious thought begins with the same two words. What if? What if I fail? What if they laugh? What if I embarrass myself? What if I'm not good enough? What if everything goes wrong? These two tiny words seem harmless, but they are the architects of entire imaginary realities, worlds filled with danger, humiliation, rejection, and failure. And the most painful part, you don't just imagine these worlds, you feel them. Your heart races, your stomach tightens, your body reacts as if the disaster is already happening, even though you are simply sitting in your room, safe, unchanged, untouched. This is the great lie of what if. It convinces you to suffer from futures that are not real. Take the example of someone trying to speak English in front of others. He hasn't even opened his mouth yet. The room is calm. Nobody is judging him. Nothing bad has occurred. But in his mind, he has already failed 10 times. He has already been laughed at. He has already been rejected. And because the imagined pain feels so real, he chooses silence. His confidence dies a little. His dream grows dimmer, all because of a future that never actually happened. This is the trap of the what-if universe. It feels real, but it is only a movie your brain is playing in your imagination. And the more you watch it, the more it controls you. The more you believe it, the smaller your life becomes. What if tricks you into running from shadows instead of walking toward reality? But here is the truth every overthinker needs to hear. What if is not your future. What if is your fear speaking in the language of possibility. Fear always imagines the worst. But the future contains more than fear. It contains hope, growth, success, connection, learning, joy. When your mind says, "What if everything goes wrong?" it forgets to mention the other side. What if everything goes right? What if this is the moment that changes your life? What if this is where your confidence begins? The way out of the what-if universe is not to predict the future perfectly. It is to return to the present moment. Right now, in this exact second, nothing catastrophic is happening. You are breathing. You are safe. You are alive. The danger exists only in your imagination. And once you realize this, something shifts. You stop suffering from futures that don't exist. You stop fighting battles that were never real. You begin to see that life is not lived in the world of what if, but in the world of what is. And that simple shift is the beginning of your true freedom from fear. Once you understand that the world of what if is nothing more than an illusion, you begin to see your thoughts differently. You begin to realize that fear lives not in reality, but in silence, hidden, unspoken, unchallenged. And that leads you to the next powerful step on your journey. To weaken a thought, you must bring it into the light. You must speak it out loud. In your mind, a thought has endless space to grow. It can stretch, amplify, twist, and echo. A simple fear becomes a catastrophe. A small insecurity becomes an identity. A single moment becomes a lifelong prediction. Your mind can replay the same sentence 1,000 times, and because no one hears it, not even you, it feels enormous, heavy, absolute, true. But the moment you say the thought out loud, everything changes. A whisper in the dark becomes a small sentence in the light. It loses its power. It loses its mystery. It loses the weight your imagination gave it. Imagine thinking, "I'm worthless. Nobody likes me. I'm going to fail again." Inside your mind, these words feel huge, overwhelming, almost undeniable. But now imagine hearing yourself say them. "I believe I'm worthless." Suddenly, the sentence sounds different. It sounds fragile, exaggerated, unreal. Your emotional brain may generate the thought, but your voice activates your logical brain, the part that can question, analyze, and challenge. And that is where transformation begins. When you hear your own fear, you naturally ask, "Is this true? Where is the proof? Would I say this to someone I love? Is this thought trying to protect me or just punish me?" These questions break the spell. You shift from being inside the thought to being an observer of it. And the moment you become the observer, the thought can no longer control you. You see it for what it is, a sentence, not a prophecy, a fear, not a fact. Speaking your thoughts out loud also stops the spiral. It forces the mind to slow down, to express one idea at a time instead of flooding you with 10 at once. It turns chaos into clarity. It turns noise into something you can understand and respond to. This practice isn't about ignoring negative thoughts. It's about disarming them. It's about making them small enough to handle. Because in silence, a thought becomes a monster. But in sound, a thought becomes manageable. Try it the next time your mind begins to race. Say the fear out loud. Say the shame out loud. Say the doubt out loud. Not to hurt yourself, but to hear yourself. To bring truth where fear used to live. you will notice something remarkable. Most of the thoughts that once terrified you sound almost ridiculous once spoken. They crumble under their own weight. They reveal themselves as exaggerations, assumptions, or echoes of old pain, not reflections of who you are or what your future will be. This is how you reclaim control. Not by fighting your thoughts, but by exposing them. Not by silencing your mind, but by giving your truth a voice. Because once you speak the thought, you take back the power it stole from you in silence. Once you learn to speak your thoughts out loud and hear their true size, something remarkable begins to happen. You no longer collapse under every fear your mind presents. But even with this new awareness, many people remain stuck, not because their thoughts are too strong, but because their standards are impossibly high. And that leads to the next truth in your journey. Perfection is the silent partner of overthinking, and until you break perfectionism, you cannot break the cycle. After you expose your thoughts, you may notice a pattern. The fear behind so many doubts always whispers the same message. You're not ready yet. You're not good enough yet. You'll embarrass yourself if you try now. This is perfectionism speaking, the voice that convinces you to wait endlessly for the perfect moment, the perfect skill, the perfect confidence. But perfection is a lie, a mask worn by fear to keep you from moving forward. Think of all the things you've ever wanted to do. Start speaking English, share your creativity, launch a YouTube channel, apply for a job, message someone you care about. Each dream was met with a list of conditions your mind created. I need to improve first. I need better equipment. I need to fix myself before I show myself. I need to be flawless before I begin. And because those conditions are endless, you stay stuck. One day becomes 1 week, becomes 1 year, becomes a quiet regret sitting in your chest. The tragedy is not that you tried and failed. The tragedy is that fear convinced you not to try at all. But here is the truth people rarely tell you. Nobody begins perfect. Every confident speaker started with trembling words. Every great creator uploaded things they now cringe at. Every successful professional sent awkward emails, made mistakes, and learned painfully in public. Greatness is never the result of perfection. Greatness is the result of progress. The world does not remember those who waited until they were flawless. The world remembers those who dared to begin. So, when your mind says, "Don't start yet," remind yourself, starting is not the opposite of perfection. Starting is the antidote to perfection. And here is the deeper truth. Perfectionism doesn't protect you from failure. It guarantees failure by preventing action. If you never start, you never grow. If you never take the risk, you never discover your strength. Progress requires movement, and movement requires imperfection. This is where everything connects. The fear you speak out loud, the thoughts you challenge, the storms you stop early. All of it leads to this moment, the moment where you choose between the illusion of perfection and the reality of progress. When you choose progress, you choose life. You choose learning. You choose becoming. Perfection is a cage that looks beautiful from the inside, but it is still a cage. Progress is the key that unlocks it. So let this be your declaration. I am not here to be perfect. I am here to grow. And with that single truth, you finally allow yourself to move forward, one imperfect, powerful step at a time. When you finally release perfection and allow yourself to grow through action, something profound begins to shift inside you. You start moving. You start trying. You start living with more courage than you thought you had. But even as you step forward, even as you build progress rather than waiting for perfection, one final truth remains, one that determines whether your journey becomes heavy or healing. You were never meant to do this alone. Asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom and strength. Up to this point, you have learned to question your thoughts, interrupt spirals, expose fears, and take imperfect steps. But growth is not just an internal battle. It is also a relational one. Because overthinking thrives in isolation. It feeds on silence, secrecy, shame. The less you share, the louder your fears become. And this is where many people get stuck. They believe that healing means handling everything on my own. They believe strength means never needing anyone. They believe reaching out makes them burdensome, dramatic, childish, or weak. But these beliefs are illusions, just like the other lies the mind creates. The truth is this: humans were not designed to carry emotional weight alone. We are wired for connection, for support, for shared understanding. Even the strongest people collapse when they try to hold everything inside. Even the happiest-looking people cry in private. Even the most successful people seek mentors, friends, therapists, guides. No one rises alone. And you shouldn't have to either. Imagine walking through a forest with no map, no path, no sunlight. You feel lost, scared, confused. Then you see someone who clearly knows the way, someone who has walked this path countless times. Would you stay silent just to appear strong? Would you pretend you knew where you were going? Or would you ask, "Can you help me find the way?" Your emotional journey is no different. You are not weak for needing support. You are not a burden for feeling overwhelmed. You are simply human, beautifully, imperfectly human. And humans heal in connection. Asking for help doesn't mean handing your life to someone else. It means allowing someone to hold the flashlight while you keep walking. It means letting someone remind you of your strength when your mind tries to erase it. It means saying, "I don't want to carry this alone anymore." And here is the most surprising part. The moment you speak your struggle to another person, the weight immediately becomes lighter, not because the problem disappears, but because the loneliness does. Overthinking thrives on isolation, but connection dissolves it. You may choose a friend, a family member, a mentor, a therapist, a teacher, or even a stranger who listens with kindness. It doesn't matter who. What matters is that you let yourself be seen, heard, supported. Because the final truth in your journey is this: you were never broken. You were never incapable. You were never failing. You were simply carrying too much on your own. And now, you no longer have to. This is where your healing deepens, not in silence, but in connection. Not in perfection, but in vulnerability. Not in isolation, but in shared strength.